Thanks, Chair. The issue that I want to raise is in relation to the waiting times for the driving test. And while we know it's an issue nationally, the numbers are particularly bad for my own constituency of Carlow and Kilkenny. And out of the two counties, Carlow actually is unfortunately faring worse, with 1,119 people currently waiting on a driver's test. And really what this means, particularly for a county like Carlow, where access to public transport is extremely limited, if available at all, is that you have a huge amount of people that are unable to access employment or unable to actually get to their jobs. And this has really been exacerbated with the COVID situation, because we don't really have access to public transport in our constituency. It's very, very limited. But where it is there, it's down to a 25% capacity. And in fact, we are hearing how people are being encouraged now not to take public transport due to COVID. But what do you do if you're in a rural village or town of Carlow and you can't get to your job, or you can't actually apply for certain jobs? Many jobs now require you to have a full licence. And, I often get contacted by people who have maybe been offered a job on the condition that they have their full licence, or they're getting their full licence, or, that there's the expectation of a job there if they can fulfil that requirement. And it's extremely difficult if you have numbers of 1,119 people waiting for a test. They're quite bad in Kilkenny as well, 888, but it is particularly acute in Carlow. And I just want to know what solutions are being looked at and what exactly is being done to address this issue and this problem, because, unfortunately, rural Ireland has to a larger extent been forgotten about. We've heard an awful lot since this government has come into place about electric cars, about cycle lanes, about walking, cycling. That's all great, that's fantastic, but that's not any good if you're 20 to 25 miles away from your employment. It's not realistic, and if you don't have access to a bus or a train. So, we need to be realistic about that sort of stuff as well. And I just want to know exactly what's being done to clear the waiting list, so that people can actually get to work and can apply for jobs. I imagine there's a huge amount of young people as well that fall into this category. And again, here we have another situation where young people are being disadvantaged. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Deputy Funchion. Minister Naughton, please.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to thank Deputy Funchion for raising this really important matter. The driver test service and the driver theory test are the statutory responsibility of the RSA. My department is in constant contact with the RSA since the start of the pandemic regarding all of its services, the impact of COVID-19 on those services and how they can best be maintained in the current circumstances. As you're aware, car driving tests were temporarily suspended due to COVID-19 in March 2020. And since resuming operations in mid-July, there has inevitably been an increased level of demand due to the consequent backlog. Unfortunately, due to the social distancing and other public health and hygiene requirements, service capacity has had to be considerably reduced. This means that customers experiencing longer waiting times than was the case before the service was suspended. Level 5 restrictions, which took effect for 6 weeks on the 22nd of October 2020, means that driving tests are now only available to those who are involved in essential services, including essential retail work. And while I regret the inconvenience caused, public safety must remain a paramount importance. The Road Safety Authority is currently examining ways of increasing the number of tests within health constraints when driver testing resumes after Level 5, and is working in close consultation with my department on this matter. This includes increasing the number of testing staff to help reduce and over time eliminate the backlog. My department has recently approved the retention by the RSA of 18 temporary driving testers whose contracts were due to expire in October and November. And the RSA has also rehired a further 18 temporary testers whose contracts expired in May. This will help to increase testing capacity when services resume. In the longer term, the department is considering proposals by the RSA for further measures to address the backlog. The driver theory test has not been deemed as an essential service under Level 5. As a consequence, the service is closed, effective from midnight on Wednesday, the 21st of October, and for the duration of Level 5 restrictions. All appointments during that time have been rescheduled to the next available appointment date. As I'm sure you're aware, the theory test service was temporarily suspended in March 2020 due to the COVID-19 emergency. When the service resumed in June, there was an increased level of demand and a significant backlog developed. This was coupled with the need to significantly reduce normal daily capacity to comply with occupational and public health requirements. When the driver theory test service closed on the 21st of October due to the latest restrictions, the majority of testing centres had almost full bookings up to the end of December, and some into January too, as it worked its way through the initial backlog. The decision was taken by the service provider that those whose appointments were cancelled due to the latest restrictions would be rescheduled to the next available appointment date. The Road Safety Authority has advised my office that it is engaging with the service provider to examine ways of increasing the number of tests within the current health constraints for when services are resumed. This will help reduce and, over time, eliminate the backlog. My department has requested that the Road Safety Authority, as the body legally responsible for the driver theory test, examine whether theory tests can be taken online remotely and what is required to do so. I understand that the authority is developing proposals in that regard. However, this planning is at a very early stage and it is not expected to come on stream in the immediate future.
Sir, Deputy Funchion, please.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Minister. Just maybe as a point of clarification, and if you don't have the information to hand, maybe you could forward it on. The 18 temporary driver testers, and then it looks like you're hiring a further 18, so is that 36 in total, and will they then be kept on, do you imagine, in a full-time capacity? Because I was going to actually mention the theory test in this part too, that obviously there is an issue with the driving test and the backlog, but we're probably going to see that issue continue for a long time, in the sense that there's been a backlog as well with the theory test. So the only way to actually tackle all of that is to obviously have testers, there in a full-time capacity. And just as well to say that there should really be consultation with the testers and the driving instructors and whoever their representative groups are, because I'm sure they all have ideas as well in terms of how to actually deal with this. And everybody wants to see this situation resolved. I know, Minister, you're from a rural constituency yourself, so you understand that a car is not a luxury in a rural community. You have to have it. It's the basics for getting kids to school, to getting to your job. So there's not the option for very many people, and it's really particularly disappointing to see young people maybe not being able to apply for certain jobs, or maybe not being able to actually take up those jobs based on the fact that they can't get their driver's licence. Now, there are other issues too as well in relation to the cost of car insurance and everything for young people, and that's a major issue too. But still, if we could get some solutions, and I do appreciate what you're saying about doing the theory tests online, like that does seem like something that surely could be done. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Deputy. Minister.
Thank you, Deputy. It's my understanding, Deputy, that 36, they're extra driving testers that will be in place. And again, I know how concerned many constituents are in relation to this. And while the service is limited during Level 5 restrictions, the Road Safety Authority is examining ways of increasing the number of tests within the health constraints, with an eye on resuming the wider testing level after Level 5. And it's working in close consultation with my department on the matter. And this includes increasing the number of testing staff to help reduce that backlog over time. And just to clarify, my department has given approval to the RSA to retain the 18 driver testers on temporary contracts due to expire this month, October and November this month, and also to rehire the further 18 temporary testers whose contracts expired in May, so they would be additional. This will help to increase the testing capacity. However, it's important to stress that there are many issues impacting on the delivery of the service, concerned with the throughput of the centres themselves in light of the restrictions, rather than on the availability of staff alone. So there's a number of health protocols that need to be adhered to in relation to the whole testing system. The RSA are also looking at a number of other measures, including whether the number of tests a driver tester can perform each day, whether that can be increased, and within the current health constraints. And due to the additional hygiene and sanitation procedures that are now absolutely necessary, each testing slot now takes a lot longer to complete because of that sanitation criteria. As a result, the number of tests a tester can safely conduct per day was reduced from 8 to 5 when the service reopened. Following experience of managing the tests under COVID restrictions, this was increased to 6 in mid-September. Currently, the RSA is prioritising driver testing for essential workers and has set up a dedicated email, which may be of assistance, Deputy. The email address is urgentdrivingtest@rsa.ie, where applicants can request to be given priority and supply supporting documentation. These requests are prioritised during the scheduling process, with cancellation slots being offered where possible. Thank you.